After a shaky start, Pitt turned last week's game into a fairly easy win, with Kenny Pickett back as the starter. Can Pitt capitalize on some much-needed momentum and get another win against a 2-5 Georgia Tech team? We preview this week's matchup against the Yellow Jackets and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today.
Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world!
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of November 14th, 2020, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan Tazinski.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Pam.
And we all knew it. And finally, Pitt figured it out. The most important thing you could have in football these days is a goal line quarterback. And also Kenny Pickett. And also a pretty bad opponent in Florida State. Either way, the Panthers are back in the win column. Blowout win over the Seminoles of Florida State. Back on the road again this week against Georgia Tech. 4 losses in a row still on people's minds, but not as much. And we get to smile, at least maybe in the corner of our mouths this week, Vince. Just a little smirk after last week's victory.
Yeah, just a little bit. We'll be talking about it. That Florida State team, they're in rough shape, and Georgia Tech in rough shape too. But nonetheless, Pitt was able to get the job done.
They did, and we're going to get the job done today because we have the director of the Hail to Pitt podcast back. Pam, welcome back. Happy win to you.
Thank you. I'm excited. It was a nice stress-free end of the game. It was nice to kind of put that one in the books, and I don't know if we can say the same for Georgia Tech, but a weak opponent, it's nice to get some wins against the teams you should be beating, finally.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since I've watched a sporting event, rooted for a team, and the game wasn't super close at the end. So that was, I didn't even when you talk about it, it's just me personally as a Steeler, Pitt, Laker fan. I don't remember another time in 2020 where the end of a game was just kind of like, I was just relaxing, maybe going on my phone a little bit, on Twitter a little bit more, maybe pouring some more beers than normal, just having a good time. And today I'm doing just that. By the way, pouring a Wicked Weeds, Uncle Rick's Pilsner, Vince, from Asheville, North Carolina. And my good friends there at Wicked Weed. By my good friends, I mean the people at the gas station that sold me the case. Awesome.
What kind of beer is that, Alan?
This is a Pilsner. It's really golden, not too hoppy, very light on the tummy. If you're watching your figure, I highly recommend it.
I've been to that brewery, great brewery, highly recommend if you're in the Asheville area.
Good friends of the show if you're down in Asheville. We got a lot of Pitt fans down in Asheville. Not a lot of people know that, but that's definitely true and definitely not just made up on the show. All right, we got a lot to get into. We've got Georgia Tech, Florida State review, some basketball talk. Of course, we're going to hit the Pitternet. We're going to have a lot of fun today. And we, of course, are on Twitter at H2P Show. If you want to follow us, reach out to us that way. Social media, we're involved in it. And, of course, email hail2 pitpodcast@gmail.com. That's hail to pitpodcast@gmail.com. And we're on Panther there. We're on Reddit. We're all over the place. We talk Pitt everywhere, all day, every single day. And we love it. And then we do the podcast, and we love this even more. This is what it's all about, being a Pitt Panther, hailing to Pitt each and every single week with you. We are brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts. You could go to prettyeasypodcast.com right now if you want to start your own podcast on any subject matter. If you're a detective, a private eye, and you want to tell some great stories, but you don't know what the hell a podcast is or how to do one, go to prettyeasypodcast.com. and get your start today and tell the world about some mysteries. PrettyEasyPodcast.com. Thank them for sure. All right. Florida State. That game was a lot of fun, but was that the real Pitt? Or was that just Pitt against a really bad team? Some are calling it, Vince, a royal and blue mirage.
Yeah, hard to say there, Alan. We talked about it last week that Florida State offensively is the kind of team that Pitt dominates and should dominate. They got a shaky offensive line, and they got a quarterback who is not really accurate in terms of getting the ball down the field to open receivers. And Pitt, after a little bit of a shaky start at the beginning, took care of business there, which was great. And I thought that was impressive, especially with some of the guys that were out on defense. And offensively, Florida State, not a great defense, but that necessarily hasn't always stopped Pitt this season. But Kenny Pickett just making a huge difference in this game. So you kind of saw what Pitt can be, when they're firing on all cylinders. But certainly Florida State not being good really helped.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Pam, I've been waiting to ask you, though, because last week Vince and I were saying, well, the defense, they'll be back for this game. They kind of took a nap during the losing streak. Would you say they gave up 17 points, but they pretty much dominated, big plays. Was Kenny Pickett like a factor in the defense maybe having their stuff together or was it just that Florida State I feel like they've played not the best opponents. I mean, obviously Notre Dame's tough and, Miami a little bit better, but not world beaters. Why was the defense all of a sudden woken up?
Well, didn't Florida State beat North Carolina?
They did.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think Florida State's had this issue the past few years where they just recruit. I mean, the recruiting's been down a little bit recently, but I think part of it, you can attribute part of the defense's success to Kenny Pickett a little bit because Kenny Pickett can extend drives and give the defense a break. I also think, did James Blackman play like one series and had a pick and then they pulled him out because their starter got hurt? Travis was banged up coming into the game, played. They put James Blackman in, and then that didn't last very long. I think
and then
James
we got
Blackman is done.
Then we got Chubba Purdy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it definitely helps the defense when you have a guy like Kenny Pickett that can extend drives, not always have 3 and outs, to give those guys a little bit of a break. But the secondary, I thought, looked pretty good without a few key players. Ford, obviously, you guys talked about last week, Pinnock and Williams.
Yeah, the secondary had a game. Also want to throw out there that the defense might have had a fun time playing this one too because of Kirk Christodoulou, who freaking was just all worldly punter in this game. Vince, he was kicking him in the exact spot, kicking him deep, pinpointing. I think he won some sort of weekly award for his performance last week, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
He the punting this year, I'd say, has been fair, for the most part, fairly solid. Very few gaffes, I would say, in that department. This defense, they really came to play, and you think, especially with how many starters down they were. I mean, you're not going up against a great Florida State team, but with how many guys that were out, they really came to play.
So Kenny Pickett shows up. He only throws 6 incomplete passes in this game. Didn't throw a touchdown, but the defense, like we said last week, got their heads kind of out of their keisters, got the 3 picks, sacked. I mean, that's what they do. They get sacks. They just sometimes give up points too. 14 tackles for loss. Is that stat correct, Vince? Is that real?
Yeah.
Holy
That's
hell.
right.
In the backfield the whole game. So defense, spectacular. And really the Pitt defense we expected all season long. But, man, Kenny Pickett, so important to this offense, and really an offense that did the things that they don't do normally, and that is catch the ball. They had no drops in this game. And goal line offense.
Yeah.
We called it Nick Patty. Where are you, Vince? You called. You said, where's Nick Patty? He showed up on the goal line twice this week.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty big time show. There's a lot of people listening to this, so I'm not surprised that it made its way to the gameplay and Nick Patty getting in there.
Geez.
But yeah, I mean, there was they tried it multiple times at the end of the game, didn't necessarily get there, but and Coach did even comment in the press conference this week that we may never see that again. Getting Nick Patty in there in that situation. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, but yeah, no drop passes, which is, it's just great to see drives extended, particularly on third down, where guys are just making easy catches. When they got down on the goal line, like you said, Alan, they were able to punch it in, multiple times, and they really just put it on them. They did an excellent job of executing. It was a little shaky at the beginning of the game, but they finally got in gear and full gear, I would say. And Florida State just wasn't going to stop them.
And how about, Pam, that they were actually down 14-3 in this game? That is hard to believe, but it is true. They did get off to somewhat of a slow start. Was there any point down 14-3 you thought, here we go again, here comes 5 in a row?
I was a little less weary because Kenny Pickett was there and knew his leadership would shine through. And I thought it was a matter of time for Florida State as well. I was a little weary, but not too bad. Not too bad. I do think that some of that can be after the bye week, just being shaky after the bye week.
That's a good point. I was very concerned.
Yeah, he was.
And I will say this, that, still, 9 penalties in this game, still way too many penalties this team has taken. We talked about it last week. Would they play better? They absolutely played better. But still, the penalties, some missed tackles in certain situations are killing this team against better competition. That phase has to be better.
Yeah.
But overall, they did play better overall, no doubt about it.
That's the offensive line again. I mean, chalk this year up. The whole year, I think, can be summed up in the offensive line needed to improve at least slightly upon last year. And if anything, they're worse or just about the same. And also, a lot of people are blaming Mark Whipple, rightfully so. But I think that at the end of it, that'll be the kind of tale that's told about this 2020 Pitt Panther football team. But they pulled off this big win against Florida State to get off the schneid. Now they look ahead to Georgia Tech, an equally futile team to Florida State without the big win under their belt. I guess they've beaten Florida State, so Florida State beating North Carolina, then beating Florida State. I don't know. This team is able to compete kind of, but they're not very good at all. This is a team that gave up 48 points to Boston College, who I don't see as an offensive powerhouse. Even Pitt played them. They're not too impressive on offense. They've got some okay players, but this is not a good defense that Pitt's going up against, and still a team in transition with a new regime, Vince.
Yeah. It's still it takes a long time to recruit your way out of a niche system like that triple option. It is going to take significant, just every facet, running backs, offensive linemen, receivers, quarterback, obviously, and you look at their quarterback, it looks like they do have a good quarterback in Jeff Sims, I believe is his name. He's been impressive. He
turns the ball over a lot.
He does turn the ball over.
He throws a lot of picks, so the secondary needs to sit back and feast on that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, 10 interceptions thrown this year. You could tell that he's under normal circumstances, he would not be starting this season. It seems like he's starting out of necessity for this team. But you could definitely see that he's very talented. He could definitely make plays on the run. He's second on the team in rushing. And, even in, a lot of big games that they lost, like even a game against Central Florida, he was able to make some big plays and keep them around in the game a little bit. So it's kind of like this past week against Florida State with Travis. It's another mobile quarterback that they're going to have to keep in check, keep in the pocket, force them to make throws that they can't really get pressure on them. And I think that's set us up to something that Pitt really excels at. So, and I expect them to excel again this week.
So would you say that it's kind of a similar matchup then to last week, and totally for the defense, they're going to be totally prepared and not a lot to worry about in terms of changing the game plan or changing how they're going to approach this one? I mean, and by that, I mean, they're going to do the same thing they do every single week, but maybe not worry about an accurate quarterback killing them downfield.
Yes, I do. I mean, I think this Sims is definitely a better athlete. Maybe the best athlete they've played against at the quarterback position this season. But
no, De'Ara King.
I don't know. This kid's very impressive. King, obviously, and King a much better thrower.
Yeah,
no doubt about that. But I think it is going to be a similar situation, and this defensive line is really going to have to get after it, and the linebacker is going to have to be there to make the plays when available.
So Georgia Tech coming into this game, they are not very good. They're 2-5. Pitt gets the win. It's nothing to get super excited about if Pitt wins this game, but the fact is Pitt needs to win this game for the future of Pitt football, because the doom and gloom, at least I think, at least a little bit, just a teensy bit, subsided after the victory over Florida State. You start seeing people at least going online, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but posting about Narduzzi and maybe being a little bit more level-headed, talking about him and his future. Obviously, everybody's still anti-Mark Whipple, it feels like, but Pitt needs to win this game against a opponent that their defense, at least defensively, they just outmatch, should overpower. They have obviously, as any ACC team, they have some players you have to game plan for and be prepared for. But I am expecting a similar story to what we saw, hopefully, against Florida State, Pam. I don't know about you, but I'm going into this one pretty confident.
Yeah, I am too. So it'll probably be a close nail biter or something if we're all pretty confident. That's the scary part here. This is a real opportunity for the offense to continue to put up points and really find a groove. Like, let's have the offense finish on a high note. Jordan Addison is a star in the making, so let's continue to feed him, and let's just put the foot on the pedal and just keep going, because this defense for Georgia Tech is terrible. This defense is giving up 40 points a game, 500 yards a game, and there's no reason why Pitt shouldn't have some success here. And we know that they've struggled to run the ball, and that probably is going to be the case early on in this game. But you mentioned it, Pam, Jordan Addison. He is just, he's just making plays all over the field. He's getting open. Kenny's finding them. But I do want to see these other guys get involved. I don't think there's enough of the other receivers involved in. I don't know if it's not involved in the game plan or the guys aren't getting open or what it is. But Alan, like a Shockey Jacques Louis, a great athlete. I just don't understand why this kid's only getting a couple targets, a couple catches a game. It seems like, especially without Taysier Mack last week, you would have thought that, he was maybe going to get the ball a lot more. And that just hasn't been the case.
I really do feel like the roles that some of the receivers are being put in is limiting. It's similar to how Paris Ford was limited on defense and asked to do very specific things where he maybe is able to do other things as well, but not being given the chance. Shockey Jacques Louis, what does he do? What does he get to do? He gets to run down the field and catch deep balls and hopefully catch them. Not too often. He gets thrown to maybe as a third option on a progression by Kenny Pickett, and he's occasionally featured in a gadget play, very rarely. So really he's limited to just running down the field and utilizing his speed. That's what Mark Whipple has labeled him as. That's what he's used for. And that's all he gets to really do. So I think these are things that you could just kind of pin on Mark Whipple and how he's utilizing the talent that he has. It's unfortunate for the wide receivers. It's for the running backs, I think not so much Whipple or their fault. It's really an offensive line thing. But how those receivers are, like Jordan Addison is great. I think he's awesome, but he's being put in those positions to shine and look great. He's being given that chance too. And I'm not going to discredit anything he's done. He's been amazing, but I don't feel like Jordan Addison is miles ahead of guys like Shockey Jacques. Do you, Pam? I don't feel like those guys are incapable of making the kind of plays he does. I mean, he's maybe a little bit more gifted in terms of finding a spot to get open, but those guys are also equally fast and agile.
But Addison's really caught the ball, so I think he's made the most of his opportunities, and Pickett is comfortable with him. He can trust him at this point in the year. I think he is a little better, yeah. He
is a better player, and obviously Kenny Pickett's recognized them. He's looking for him, and he's delivered too. But I feel like Shockey Jacques Louis is a guy especially that should be given more opportunities.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And even a guy like Jared Wayne.
Yeah,
he had two big catches last week. I believe it was 66 total yards on two catches. But that's somebody who you would think a big-bodied receiver like that on a third and short situation, instead of trying to do even a third and medium. Instead of trying to do a short, a swing pass to a running back or something that somebody that's not even beyond the line of scrimmage, why not, throw just a quick 5-yard hook or a slant route or something where especially in today's game, where defensive holding and pass interference are called now more than ever. You get a big-bodied receiver like that, he could get position, and it basically forces the defender to foul him in order to stop him from catching the ball. I would love to see those guys get the ball more in those kind of situations, and I'm hoping we start to see that more as the season comes to a close.
Yep, and they have the opportunity this week because, like we said, Georgia Tech stinks on defense. Before we move on, I want to go back real quick to the Florida State game, Pam, and we talk about him all the time, Vincent Davis. I don't recall him getting that far past the line of scrimmage all season at all. In that game, it was really exciting to see for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I think I even commented at one point during the game while watching the game, like he gets hit so hard and he just keeps going and going and going. So, it was nice to see him kind of get some yards.
That was it. He got some, and then A.J. Davis even got some play, Vince. It was really a different tale for the running backs in that Florida State game. So we should keep an eye on that going into the Georgia Tech game.
Yeah, on the latest depth chart, if you believe it. A.J. Davis is the number 2 running back right now. It's been interesting how they've used these guys over this season, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it. When the season's over, about who should have been getting more touches and what we look forward to for next year. But with the way the offensive line and the play calling has been, there hasn't been a ton of opportunities there all the time. But this was a game where, like you said, Alan, he was able to get through the hole without getting touched quite a bit, particularly in the second half. And I don't know if a lot of that was, Florida State had, the wind was out of their sails, or Pitt finally found a groove and was gotten to a good rhythm of running the ball. Or whatever it was, but it did work out, and they were able to close out that game pretty nicely. And that's the thing. I do think that these running backs that they do have some good talent. It's just been, I really think it's been play calling and line play that's held them back for the most part. Not on everything, but I think that's been the bulk of the issue.
And it's unfortunate that because the offense is such a point of contention with the Pitt Panthers, we do, admittedly on here, spend less time talking about some of the standouts on defense, but we do have to finally give it up to Servassier Dennis, who is I think turning into a legitimate stud for the Pitt Panthers, potential star, and really having a hell of a year and a steal. I don't even think from what I've heard, he was not given many offers to big-time college football programs, Vince. And look at him here. You got 2 sacks last week and has been all over the place every single week, it feels like.
Yeah, he's been the most impressive linebacker for sure.
One of the most impressive people on defense.
Yeah, one of the best on defense, and a guy that wasn't even really, we knew he was going to be in the rotation in that top 6 group at linebacker, but some injuries have happened, and he's been given more opportunities, and he's rise to the occasion. And going forward, he's going to be a centerpiece of this defense. I feel like in the Pat Narduzzi era, this may be the best linebacker we've had in terms of a guy that has both the size and the speed. And he's got good instincts too. He knows how to get to the football and bring the ball carrier down.
Hell of a job last week. And then Brandon Hill getting, of course, that pick 6, stepping in for Paris Ford as the new starter. So that was pretty cool to see. Pitt looking to carry over that defensive effort against Georgia Tech. We will give a prediction on the game in just a little bit. Let's move on to hoops. First hoops segment in forever, Pam, because the schedule released and the Peterson Event Center will indeed allegedly host some basketball games this coming season. Now, if it was this week, that would not be happening because Pitt's on stay-at-home order on campus. Students can basically only go to class and essential stuff, work out, and go get food. But hopefully, when this basketball season starts, they'll be playing in front of 1,250 people maximum at the Pete. That's what they've put the number at currently. And the schedule, if it does happen, is pretty exciting. You got Duke coming to town on there, a lot of big-time ACC games. It's going to be an interesting college basketball season.
Yeah, absolutely. Pitt's going to play Northwestern in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. ACC tentatively plays. Everything's subject to change, so we're not going to dive too far into the schedule today. We'll take a look at the team closer in depth in the upcoming weeks, but they play against Miami on December 16th for the start of the ACC. They end the season at the beginning of March against Clemson, and the ACC tournament runs March 9th through March 13th. But everything's a little subject to change. We'll talk about that in our college football segment. But things are really up in the air. But
interesting that they didn't. At least I didn't see any information on any other non-conference games, or maybe they're not going to have any.
From what I read, coaches are trying to scramble and schedule. They were kind of, from what I read, I think it was Jeff Goodman was talking about how I think some schools were waiting. A lot of schools are scrambling at the last minute. So who knows what will happen with any other non-conference games. I know on the women's side, some of the teams are doing like mini tournaments and like almost like not a bubble, but kind of like an isolated situation, a few game tournaments with teams that we typically would see, I guess, this time of year normally. But
all I know is I cannot wait to see that Irishman Max Madison in a Pitt Panther uniform, to see what he does, to see what the new recruits do. But this college basketball season, first and foremost, what the hell is it going to look like? Will it be an opportunity for teams like Pitt to maybe get wins that they wouldn't have gotten, because there's really going to be minimal home court advantage, Vince, for teams like Duke and North Carolina? Will they be limited with how many Cameron Crazies? This is going to be one of the more interesting COVID seasons of all the sports.
Yeah, Duke, Pam, I know you're all over this story. They did come out and they said, I believe, there will be no students, no Cameron Crazies at all at their home games, at least as of right right now. So that's a very interesting point, Alan.
Yeah.
College basketball among all sports may have the, maybe weighted the heaviest in terms of home field or home court advantage. And so that is a very good point. And, for a team like Pitt, who, they could use any win they could get, at this point, in their trek to get back up into the, upper echelon of college basketball, climbing out of this very deep hole that they're in. But, looking at, the talent, the recruiting, some of the transfers that Coach Capel has brought in, I think that this year they could definitely take a step in the right direction. I expect a bigger jump, than we saw last year. And I think you could be right in that there may be some more opportunities to steal a game on the road that weren't always available.
It's a different kind of season coming up. So out of nowhere, maybe, if you're a historian in like 20 years, you say, wait, how did out of nowhere Pitt win the ACC in 2020? What happened that year? You're going to know it was maybe because there were no fans. But we'll see how it actually all ends up turning out. But the schedule was released. And similar to when the college football schedule was released over the summer, the times and all, we all kind of take it with a grain of salt. And, we'll see what happens and see how it pans out, because the SEC is kind of falling into what we predicted before the season started this week, and we'll get into that in just a bit. But, yes, the Pitt basketball schedule's out. You've got the ACC tournament in March, which I have very high hopes for to actually be a really exciting tournament. Maybe one of the first big sporting events with a packed house, if all goes according to plan. But, of course, no one knows at the moment with the current climate we're all in. But we do know that we are ready for Pitt hoops to get underway safely here on the Hail to Pitt podcast. If you are ready, Pam, Vince, I'm ready to go onto the virtual chatter here, because I want to know what people are saying after a win about this schedule, and also some comments Pat Narduzzi made this week.
Let's do it.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
First up on Panther Lair, Chris46 said, pathetic. Only 3 of the 11 games this year will be on national TV. Everything else was garbage ACC network. Pam, the ACC network is not garbage. It is a very great cable channel, sports channel. I watch it. I think it's a good channel.
I like it too. I think it's great. I think the biggest issue, I think they should be trashing Comcast here.
Yes.
But the thing is, the ACC network is national TV.
It's not national. It's global, Chris46. That it can be watched by Pitt fans that are in the military, Pitt fans that are over in England. The ACC network is accessible to everybody, unless you live in Pittsburgh and have Comcast.
And this week the game's on Root, right?
Yes, or AT&T Sportsnet.
Whatever it's called.
That is the first game, and probably the only game this year that will not be nationally televised. This is something that really bothers me, as people, that was the purpose of this network, was, among other things, was to have more ACC games nationally televised and not just on regional networks, so that if you're in England, or if you're in Wyoming, or if you're in Texas or California, if you have access to the ACC network, which is a national channel, a national broadcast channel, cable channel, you'll be able to watch these games. And I think it's great. I don't have, if I had Comcast, I would be, pretty upset about it, but I would also do something about it, and I would make sure that I had the ACC network. FiOS in the Pittsburgh area does not have AT&T Sports Network anymore, from what I understand. So if you're a Comcast person, this may be the only game you've been able to watch in a long time, outside of, I guess, the Miami and Notre Dame games. Or maybe
also
Miami was ACC network.
Yeah, it was
Notre
ACC
Dame,
network.
I think, was the only one.
On the plus side, too, when you're like, oh, the game's only on Root, that also does mean, though, that the game is also probably on Fox Sports Southwest, Prime Ticket, and other sports networks in other towns that are looking for stuff to air. They air these, to them, random college games. And the Pitt football team is, yes, going to be broadcast in some weird cities this week because of that. But I mean, 3 of 11 ain't bad, and things change. If your team's good at the end of the year, that 3 might turn to 5 or 6. The schedules can be changed on TV easily with stuff like that. And who cares anyway, Chris46? Just watch the game and hail to Pitt. Let's go on to the next one. I'm excited for this one. I found this on Reddit. This is from H2 the Berg, who said, I'm excited for any win at this point. Nobody's calling for Narduzzi to be extended at this point. Like needs to figure out if we need to clean house or just fire Whipple and give it one more year. I personally think they're going to go with the latter, regardless of what we want. What does that mean, regardless of what we want? What I want is get rid of Whipple, get another coordinator in there, and just keep this train moving, Pam. Find that Matt Canada replacement finally, hopefully, because I felt like they were on a track, and that got derailed because of that loss. But a lot of Pitt fans feel like it's just as good as it's ever going to get. What do you feel?
I feel like, they need to try mixing it up with some young, energetic coordinators, especially on the offensive end. Like, college football is so progressive, so different. I mean, look at even someone like Nick Saban's adjusted his plan. I mean, he went out and hired Lane Kiffin, and he changed his offense. Look at Mac Jones. He's throwing for thousands of yards. He's rocketing up draft boards because Nick Saban a few years ago changed with the times. So we need to change with the times. I'm not saying I think Pat Narduzzi can, and especially on that defensive side of the ball, right that ship, but his strength is not the offense. They need to get creative on that side of the ball.
Yeah, as much criticism as I give the defense for the scheme that they run, and I'm convinced that the defense can only be so good given this scheme. If you look at Pitt's record, whenever their offense scores 30-plus points, their record's pretty good. So that tells me right there that, as long as their defense is not getting torched all the time, which Pitt's defense is not. They do have some bad games every once in a while, but, it kind of seems like if you had an offense that was just, an average college football offense, that this team, would have won, several more games. It's kind of like, in 2016, if they had a defense that was just average, that they would have won a few more games. So it's kind of just bringing it all together, and that's kind of one of the things where you really got to weigh, is Pat Narduzzi the guy or not? He does some things well, but then there's also a lot of question marks on if they're ever going to get there. So you really got to weigh that out, and I can't wait to see the rest of the season and then really dig into it whenever we're in the off season.
Well, speaking of the guy who's in charge right now still, he said some interesting things this week about the team that just upset the Clemson Tigers. Talking about Notre Dame, Pat Narduzzi said he would love to have him. If you want to play in the ACC, come play in the ACC, he said about Notre Dame. And if you don't want to play, let's not give them 5 games. Let them go play BYU or whoever else they want to play. Shots fired at BYU notwithstanding, Pam, what do you think of Pat Narduzzi's quote there?
I think it's in poor taste this year. I mean, everyone in the ACC is getting a big chunk of that Notre Dame NBC money, from my understanding. And NBC said that the Notre Dame Clemson game was one of the highest rated games, I think, since the Bush push. 15 years ago. So no one's batting an eye at the money that's going to be coming in from Notre Dame. So what is it? Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Especially in this year. So
what did you told me yesterday it was don't snap at the mouth that feeds you or something.
Yeah, I got the saying wrong, but this time I got it right when it mattered most. But
it also makes you look kind of like a punk ass too, because your team just got whooped by that team. So it looks, talking tough about Notre Dame at all as the Pitt head coach after they just mollywopped you. Just kind of shut your mouth. If someone asks you about them, say if they want to be in the ACC, it'd be great to have them here. That's all you need to say. But throwing that other shade, as the kids say, is kind of in poor taste.
And
like
don't
Pam
throw
said.
shade at BYU. BYU is a top team. I know
that would probably would kick Pitt's ass. Honestly,
well, I think he mentioned BYU because BYU is an independent. The same as Notre Dame.
Could have said Army.
Army, he could have said Army. Who is also, they were flirting with a top 25 ranking as well. Notre Dame, the ACC benefits a lot from them. And probably the biggest thing is, they got to play 5 or 6 ACC schools per year, and half those games are going to be on NBC, but then half of them are going to be whenever they're road games. Those games are automatically going to be nationally televised. Yeah, so that's an extra couple probably ABC nationally televised games that you're gaining by them playing additional ACC teams, and the more exposure for your ACC teams, the better. So is it great from a traditionalist standpoint? No, but is it a monetary benefit for the ACC and good for exposure? Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all for it, but the quotes from Pat Narduzzi, it's just a guy who kind of puts his foot in his mouth, I think, a little too often these days. We will see what else he says throughout the season, though, when prompted with interesting questions like that. And, of course, we'll comment on them right here, just as Pitt fans are commenting about Pat Narduzzi nonstop, it feels like. Vince all over town, a 4-game losing streak, then beats Florida State, says things about Matt Canada. He's a very outspoken guy, and people are outspoken about him.
Yeah, it's it seems like any time a Pitt coach is loses a few games, there's always discussion of a change.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the yinzers are saying.
You think if we lose, they fire Narduzzi and Wani come back?
Nah, he's gone all Hollywood, all at that big noon kickoff show.
Oh, I never see that. What channel that on?
53.
Hail to Pitt.
What the yinzers are saying.
That's what the yinzers are saying. Just a lot of weird discussions around town. As I said, anytime a Pitt coach loses a few games, there's always discussion for a firing. But we do have to move on to this week in college football. And then really with all these games getting canceled, there's not a whole lot of games out there to discuss, Alan. But there's one big Western Pennsylvania game that WPIL high school game that I want to discuss a little bit.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, after Friday, it's really I'm just going to be waiting for the NFL on Sunday, the Pitt game in the NFL, the rest of the college football. Who knows what's going to happen? But we got big game with Cincinnati playing on Friday. And then, of course, right here, Aliquippa, TJ, it's on. What's the spread on that game? And why is Thomas Jefferson going to win?
Well, Alan, believe it or not, this game is actually going to be on Saturday from what I understand.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did they move the game? Did they move the game because they said, "Oh, no one's going to be watching LSU and Alabama now, so we'll move the game to Saturday"?
I think so. It's going to be at 1:00 on the CW. So I'm sure there's some people who are going to be complaining that it's not a national broadcast.
Or on the point. That's where I want to watch it.
But yeah, this is a big game here. I've been talking to a lot of people about this game. Aliquippa, it's just so impressive that they keep moving up in class with just small enrollment, and they continue to just beat everybody. And this is the Class 4A game going up against TJ, traditional power, Thomas Jefferson. But Aliquippa, I think they just have too much speed for this Thomas Jefferson team. TJ, they lost to McKeesport earlier this year, a smaller, quicker team, which was really able to disrupt some of the blocking schemes that Thomas Jefferson's known for. And that's why I am going to go with Aliquippa in this game. TJ just does not seem as strong. They don't.
Whatever. TJ's winning, then we're all going to go over to Mama Russo's for some meatballs afterwards. It's going to be a great Saturday. Pitt's going to win, too. I got TJ. I'm not hearing that on this show, Vince. Don't bring that here.
I'm going with Aliquippa. I think this is a big statement game for Aliquippa. So.
Yeah. You got to think that they're really fired. Anytime they get a chance to play one of the really big boys, they want to make a statement, and there's not many bigger than TJ in Western Pennsylvania. They also want revenge for that championship game they lost against TJ in 1980. They also want big revenge from that, from what I've heard. So
since basically college football, the SEC's canceled. Here are the three things I'm looking forward to the most on Saturday. TJ beating Aliquippa is my number 3. Boston College and Jerko beating Notre Dame. And then, of course, Pitt beating Georgia Tech. That's what I'm geared up for, Pam, on Saturday. And that's what I'm going to be tossing back the rest of these cases of Wicked Weed Uncle Rick Pilsners on a college football Saturday.
If that's your slate, it lines up perfectly time-wise. I think the Quippa TJ game's at 1.
Yep.
3:30, I think it's ABC. I think it's nationally televised for those interested, is the Boston College Notre Dame game, and then Pitt Georgia Tech at 7. So you could that's I have a feeling that's what we'll be doing here. So
I mean, I am excited to see that Boston College game. Jeff Hafley, to see what he could do against a team that just upset Clemson, number one team in the land.
Because they don't deserve. Notre Dame shouldn't be in the playoff, and they're ducking USC this year. So really, this is our last hope right here. This is what we need. Boston College, come on, do it for us. Pitt -6.5 against Georgia Tech. Pam, what do you see happening?
I think Pitt's going to win. I think it's going to be like a 34-16 win for Pitt. I think they win, and they win handily. I think it's I think it's 34-16. I think it's going to be another easy week. Maybe I'm just projecting what I want to happen more so than what I think. But I think I've seen Georgia Tech a few times this year. That defense is really bad. I think Pitt's defense scores once or twice as well from a turnover. So 34-16 is what I got.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident too in I don't know about the score. I think the score, I'm going to go under 30 for Pitt, 29-13. But I'm looking most importantly here, Vince, Kenny Pickett over 300 yards passing in here, distributing the football to people not named Jordan Addison.
Yeah, if he does get over 300 yards passing, I expect Pitt to score quite a bit of points in this game. I'm going to go Pitt 34, Georgia Tech 13, and I as you said, Alan, I think it's really important. We've stressed at this show, you got to get more guys involved in this offense. It can't just be Jordan Addison all the time. But at the same time, as long as they continue to just not drop the ball, this offense, can be better than what it has shown.
How do you like me now?
So that's a cover all around, at least, and a Pitt win. It's what we all expect. In a little bit better of a mood, maybe less people calling for Narduzzi to be fired after a win, Pam? Probably not.
Yeah, we'll wait and see.
I doubt that.
Don't hold your breath. But enjoy it. Enjoy the weekend. There's college football to be played, just not in the South. But hopefully you're all staying safe, unlike some football teams out there that are getting caught up. It's a dangerous climate out there. But somehow they're getting through this college football season, and we've been covering it each and every single step of the way, and we will continue to do so. Can't wait, though. Let's get this win, though, against Georgia Tech first, Pam.
Yep, hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. We will see you right back here on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us at H2P Show on Twitter, and we will be right in this spot with you next week, celebrating that W over the Yellow Jackets. Hail to Pitt, everyone.